So let us begin, I guess. So the first one is from medicalnewstoday.com. Atrial fibrillation increases the risk of dementia, which I've never actually thought about, but totally 100% makes sense. So let us jump into this. So no evidence suggests... Oh, do you know what? Sorry. It's by Maria Kohut and published Thursday, October 11th, 2018. And it was fact-checked by Jasmine Collier. All right, now that we got that out of the way. Back to it. New evidence suggests that atrial fib, in which the heart has an irregular beat, is linked to an increase of dementia. This knowledge, however, also indicates that a potential preventive strategy, research shows, which is cool. So, it was published in the Journal of Neurology. Research at, I'm going to butcher this, Karolinska Institute and Stockholm University, which are in Sweden, explains that atrial fibrillation, or AFib, is linked with increased risk of developing dementia. In AFib, the heart atrium, which is the chamber that receives the blood and then sends it to the ventricles, so the top two. I'll throw up a picture of a heart and I'll circle which one the atria is. So these pump out to the rest of the body, that's the ventricles. So the atria beat irregularly. Because of this, the blood can pool inside the heart and form clots. Whenever blood is stagnant, it's no longer moving, it clots. It's like as soon as it stops, then the clotting process can begin. So so it forms clots, which then may later circulate to the brain and leads to a stroke. As you might not know, atrial fib is a huge cause of stroke. If you have atrial fib, your chances of getting a stroke is increased tenfold. The new study has found that AFib also increases the risk of another health problem as people age, namely dementia. However, this warning also comes with an encouraging solution. So compromised blood flow caused by atrial fibrillation may affect the brain in a number of ways. We know that as people age, the chance of developing AFib increases, as does the chance of developing dementia. So, AFib is linked with faster cognitive decline. In the study, they analyzed data from 2,685 participants, all average age of 73. All these participants were followed for an average of 6 years. So this seems quite extensive, which is great. It's good to see that they didn't sort of fuck around and use small numbers. This is a pretty good sample size, I'd have to say. The team interviewed each person and administered a medical exam and the baseline. Then again, after 6 years, the participants younger than 78, or once every 3 years in the case of participants older than 78 at the beginning of the study. None of the volunteers had dementia at the baseline, though 9% of all participants had been diagnosed with atrial fib. So that's 243 individuals had atrial fib. Over the following period, 11% of the total number of participants of the 279 develop AFib, and 15% of the cohort... wait, let me read that again. Over the following period, 11% of the total number of participants developed AFib, and 15% of the cohort received a diagnosis of dementia. So that's quite a bit, 15%. After analyzing the data, the research revealed the cognitive function, including thinking capacity and memory, of participants with AFib tended to deteriorate more rapidly in the case of people with healthy cardiovascular systems. Also, people with AFib had a 40% higher chance of developing dementia when compared with their healthy peers. 40%. So this is one study, right? It's not an end-all, be-all sort of thing, but it's interesting to look at. So of the 2,163 participants without AFib, 10% were diagnosed with dementia. So, as for the 552 people with AFib, 23% developed dementia. Okay, so kind of interesting. Blood thinners may counteract risk. However, the team saw that participants with AFib who took blood thinners to prevent the blood clots had a 60% lower risk of developing dementia compared to those who did not take it. Of the 342 people who did not take the blood thinners, 22% of the 22% developed dementia, while 128 who did not take blood thinners and only 11%. Okay. Here's a quote from one of the researchers. Assuming that there was a cause and effect relationship between the blood thinners and the reduced risk of dementia, we estimate that 54% of dementia cases would be hypothetically prevented if all the people with atrial fib had been taking blood thinners, which is very cool. I'd love to see this study redone and replicated. So, additional efforts should be made to increase the use of blood thinners among older people with AFib. Investigators nevertheless admit that the study faced some limitations, such as the fact that they did not distinguish among different subtypes of atrial fib, and certain participants with AFib may not have been diagnosed accordingly due to lack of symptoms. Okay, so I don't think they actually talked about potential thoughts behind why this could be, or at least the science. So maybe I'm going to delve into this. Like I said, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I can sort of think about why that would happen. So, with atrial fib, obviously, your blood is pooling, right? So clots could be shot out. But not only that, but your heart isn't functioning as well as it can because, well, it's stuttering, right? So maybe the heart's not sending as much blood. Maybe there's the lack of blood supply going to the brain is less than those who do not have atrial fib. And then with a lack of blood supply going to the brain, causes nerve damage, and then eventually causes dementia. Again, that's just sort of my thought and the rationale. Maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't. But nevertheless, I think it's important that this study be repeated because those are significant numbers. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know if there's ever been any studies done like this. I'm sure there has been, but nevertheless, very interesting indeed.